Welcome back to the UNF Leadership Podcast. This week, we're excited to bring you our first in-person conversation of our summer season. One of our favorite guest lecturers at the University of North Florida, Captain Rick Hoffman. Stationed at Naval Station Mayport, Captain Rick commanded the USS Wert and USS Hughes City. Upon retirement, he founded Orion Solutions, LLC, a defense contracting firm, and became even more involved in our Northeast Florida community, including serving on the UNF Student Affairs Community Council since 2013. He also hosts 2 syndicated TV programs, Legacy of Leaders and From C-Suite to C-Suite. While he served in the United States Navy for 28 years, Captain Rick likes to say he served our country for 51 years because of his service to the Jacksonville community as a leader and entrepreneur beyond just the ships that he led. This is Voices of Leadership, Captain Rick Hoffman. Welcome into this week's edition of the UNF Leadership Podcast, where we interview some of our greatest leaders in our UNF Taylor Leadership Institute ecosystem and beyond. No one demonstrates the values of the Taylor Leadership Institute more than a mainstay for us here at the Taylor Leadership Institute as a lecturer, a mentor in our UNF mentoring program, the one and only Captain Rick Hoffman. Captain Rick, thanks so much for taking the time.
Mia, this has been a real delight. Thank you so much for having me. Taylor Leadership Institute has been a big part of my life now for over a decade. And so watching the young men and women succeed, entering the workforce with a stronger foundation on who they are, what's their self-worth, and how they can better contribute to the whatever organization they find themselves in, it's just been a real delight. And the people that Matt has gathered around him as his team has been just a lot of fun to be around. And you were amongst that cohort.
I appreciate that. And we did just get done. We are in your TV studio, we're going to call it. We just got done filming an episode for your leadership series, The Legacy of Leadership. But for those who are unfamiliar with you, this is typically where we start these episodes. Just give us your leadership journey, however you want to describe it, from where you were to where you are today.
Well, my leadership journey began in a cradle. My father was a career Army officer. He came from 7 generations of career military. So I am an American ninja. And so as I was growing up, I grew, my dad was the colonel. And so the sorts of discipline.
You're the captain, he was the colonel.
He was the colonel. And in the Army, a captain doesn't outrank a colonel. So, but the sort of discipline and the sort of focus that my father brought to the table kind of shaped who I was growing up. But I recognized that some of the austere leadership skills that were necessary to build a 150,000 person army to a 5 million person army in 1940 may not be an effective way of leading young men and women today. I was always a little bit contrarian, to include when I went off to college. I went to the Citadel on a Navy ROTC scholarship. Vietnam was still ongoing. So I knew I was prepared to serve. I had no political axe to grind. I just knew that the Army wasn't the place for me. The Navy probably wasn't either, but off I go. So I went to the Citadel, and I quickly figured out that leadership model there was not mine either. I became openly subversive. Like 4 years as a cadet private, their leadership model didn't fit my personality. But when I got to my first ship and I began to work with these young men who had a tough job to do under austere circumstances, I connected with them very well. My first job was as first lieutenant. The first lieutenant has about 40 young men who are typically, their scores didn't allow them to proceed into a skill set. So I called we call them in the 1940s and 50s, those guys were typically called deck apes. They were the painters, the scrapers. They're the guys heaving around on a line. They're the guys putting boats in water. They're the guys that do the manual work.
But they're still leaders, to be fair, in their own right.
In their own right, they absolutely have to. But they're not often at that age, and when they first start, given the opportunity to contribute, to add, because the chief petty officer was God. And even as an ensign, I wasn't really in charge. But I realized early on that what you and I referred to early conversations, coercive leadership, wasn't my model either. And so I stayed in the Navy for 28 years. I commanded 2 ships, and I was able to take my own ideas, that my job as the captain of the ship is to provide my sailors with the tools, the time, and the training to do their job. And if I have failed to do that, and often Big Navy would fail the ship, they would fail me. They would not give me the manpower to do a job I needed to do, or they would say, work smarter, but not harder, which is a failing leadership model.
Oh, we got to stick a pin in that. We're going to circle back to that later.
Oh yeah,
Continue.
I said no. If you don't give me the resources to do my job, then don't give me that. Don't give me that. And so that became sort of the cornerstone. Now, early on, I recognized as the captain of the ship, I control time. I can change the day of the week. And I did this. I was operating off Haiti back in '94 on my frigate, and it was lunchtime on a Wednesday. I know it was Wednesday because that's slider day. In the U.S. Navy, you always serve hamburgers on Wednesdays, and they're called sliders because the quality of the beef that we get for hamburgers don't allow the hamburger to stick to the griddle when the ship's rocking and rolling. So sort of as a lark, I'm not a big fisherman, but I recognize that a lot of my sailors really enjoyed that sort of stuff. So we had fishing gear. So I'm off Haiti, and it's lunchtime, so we bring the ship up to 3 knots, and we start trolling through this water. And about 12:15, we catch a marlin. So I'm on the back of the ship, and it's lunchtime, so it's not like I'm stealing any from the United States Navy. But so we catch this fish. And so I'm on the fantail with my walkie-talkie, engine stop, engine back 1/3. I'm doing Captain Rick's fish charter off Haiti with this marlin. We ultimately brought it to the side of the boat.
How big was it?
It was 10 feet from the fork of the tail to the tip of the rostrum, 103 pounds. And so I had a duty gunner's mate muster on the fantail with a 45, pop, and we brought him aboard and we ate him. But meanwhile, my executive officer, the number 2 in command, was fairly new and didn't know me well. So at 1 o'clock, the officer deck on the bridge, because we're underway, said, turn to resume ship's work. And I called up the bridge and said, belay my last, now commence holiday routine, basically giving all the sailors the afternoon off. Right. Well, the XO races up the bridge, choking out the officer deck, and he's pointing the walkie-talkie and saying, captain's on the fantail. And so he came rolling down on me. And I said, XO, we're going to be here for 3 more weeks. What do we have to do this afternoon that's more important, that will have more lasting memories for our sailors than catching this fish? Okay? And he went back to his cabin and sulked, but I declared it Wednesday. I declared it Sunday. Yeah. And when I recognize that I can do that, I recognize that time is a leadership model that we in the Navy don't take full advantage of. We hear about hurry up and wait. The captain says, have the crew ready to go at 0800. The XO tells the department heads, have them all out there at 7:30. You see where this goes. Next thing you know, they're standing around at 4 a.m. wondering what the hell they're doing. And I said, we will not do that here. I will not waste your time. And so, so I forced that into the psyche of my ship. So the other thing that I recognize is that all of us, everyone who achieves a high rank in the Navy or in any of the services, is convinced they got there because they're superb leadership skills. The vast majority are wrong. How do I know that I'm not in that vast majority that's as diluted, that ego bias? And this is my opening spiel to the Honors College leadership talk. I say, it turns out I'm the least qualified person in this conversation to determine whether I'm a leader or not. Only you can tell me whether I am. I may think I am, but if I assert that I am, I almost certainly am not. Okay. And I can't ignore the fact that I'm in a coercive environment where I can say something really stupid. You still have to go do it. Okay.
Because you're the boss.
The Uniform Code of Military Justice compels you. Okay. Right. It's not a team necessarily. And I forced myself to overcome that, both in command of USS Way City and when I had USS DeWert, and even now as I continue my journey. So my leadership technique is to, as we discussed, what is the why? Why am I doing this? And if I can't articulate that to myself, then I need to pause and say, what am I doing? And has Big Navy given me the tools to do what I need to do? And if not, I'm going to go back to Big Navy and say, I'm not going to do this. Right. Okay. Glaring example. We have every 5 years, every ship in the Navy goes through a congressionally mandated inspection called the Board of Inspection Survey. Yep. And they inspect a lot of stuff over which I have no control. Big Navy says we're going to pay to get deep preservation and maintenance on bilges, for example. I'm not manned to do that. But then Big Navy doesn't pay to do that, so it doesn't get done, but I'm going to be inspected on it. So traditionally what we do in our myopic way is we throw people at it. We call it a tiger team. And we take the bottom 10% of every division, throw them into a group and send them to the bilges. It's a losing leadership model. So what I did is I went to my chief petty officers and I said, by the way, the Navy mans us to do watchkeeping. They do not man us to do deep maintenance and preservation. We're going to be inspected on deep maintenance and preservation. So we have to adjust accordingly. I'm not going to put together a Tiger team. My USS Way City was the only U.S. Navy warship named for a Vietnam era battle. So our logo was a stylized Asian dragon. So I created a dragon team. Remember now, I've got 40 operations specialists and 35 fire control specialists who own almost nothing of the ship. I've got 4 enginemen who own a third of the engineering spaces. And they need help, not because they're not doing their job. We've given them a job that the Navy said they weren't going to be asked to do, and now we have to. So I pulled my chiefs together. I said, here's the 10 spaces that need attention. You guys work it out.
Right.
And my team came together. And the guy that got me the most, the guy that figured me out the quickest, now retired Master Chief Rylan Remy, came to me in 2006 and said, I want to work for you for the rest of my life. He was just here about an hour ago.
Yeah.
And we just interviewed him from the C to the C-suite. He got what I was trying to accomplish. He was my advocate to the other chiefs, and they came together and they did this thing flawlessly. And everybody understood why they were.
Again, they knew the why.
They
knew why they
That's
had
right.
to do this. So I want to take this to another point that you made, Captain Rick, and tie this to something else. The bottom 10%, this is something that the Navy asks for every 5 years, is recertification.
Yeah.
And so the traditional approach is, well, we're going to take the bottom 10%, they're going to bandage the situation, they're going to doll it up, dress it up, and that's how we're going to pass recertification. Did I hear that correct?
That's what we did. What happens is the captain tells the XO, I need 50 people on this team. Well, they go to the chiefs and say, I need you to give me 3. They're not going to give you the guys that are painful to give you. They're going to give you the 3 or 4 guys that they can spare.
Yes.
So you're not.
But not necessarily the guys that are going to do the best job.
They will absolutely not do the best job. And additionally, they will need the most leadership, and we will not provide the best leaders.
Which brings us to this.
Yeah.
Just because you are a great soldier, just because you're a great midshipman, does not mean you are a leader. Does not mean you are a captain. And the same can be said for just because you're a great accountant doesn't mean that you can run your own accounting firm. Just because you're a great hygienist doesn't mean you can run your own dental practice.
Yeah, exactly. Well, but let's look at some other models. Who becomes principals of high schools?
Teachers.
And a person who's really, really skilled in the classroom, are they necessarily? Mm-hmm. Many are.
Yes, but not
many
all.
are, but not necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a necessary prerequisite to success in that environment. So you're spot on. You totally get where I was heading with this. And so at this point, all of my chiefs now are invested in the success of all of the ship, not just in their little niche, not in just their little area. And quite frankly, it made my life immensely easier. Now, 2 other things happened. Mm-hmm. I took command of the ship in January of 2001. In October of 2000, USS Cole was attacked off in Yemen. So we had an immediate terrorist attack on a U.S. Navy warship that killed American sailors that I had to now convey to my sailors. How do we make sure that does not happen to us?
Right.
Okay. 10 months later, 9/11 happens. And now I show up on the ship. This is 25 years ago. I got a 00 blade on the side, flat top, 17-inch neck. I was still pushing 3 1/4, still squatting 4 1/2.
Nice.
So 117
I know I keep looking at my screen because I know you're worried about your physique and the fact that you're not doing that. You look great. You look awesome.
Yeah. But and they knew me. They knew my reputation. Mayport's a small base. I just left the Enterprise Battle Group as the operations officer. We did exercise Operation Desert Fox, where we shot 300-some Tomahawk cruise missiles into Iraq. They knew I was a warfighter. They knew that I was going to bring the warfighting ethos to the ship. And so the ship had not been operational for 5 years. It had been a research and development project. And we arranged for me to take command of the ship 1 year to the day before their first deployment in 6 years. So I had to recertify the combat systems. I had to recertify the crew to fight the ship. And I had to bring them back to a warfighting ethos. And as evidenced by Rylan Remy joining my journey for my second career. And we are still very close to many of those who served with me on that ship.
Right.
So the other thing that was interesting is the first time I'd ever served with women at sea.
Was in 2001.
When I took command of USS Way City. Wow. Now, I'd served with women, but I'd never served with women at sea. Now, I have 2 sisters, no brothers, 2 daughters, no sons. So I had a pretty good idea. And I'd watched the Navy fumble integration.
Yes.
And I was watching the Navy fumble, sexual integration, and we're not doing it. So we have all these rules and regulations about fraternization and don't ask, don't tell. It was don't ask, don't tell was during that period as well. You may recall that's the whole, you can be gay, but don't let me know. So I called the crew together and I said, here's the thing. All these rules were written by lawyers, not leaders. And there are loopholes in there. Well, if you're not in your chain of command, you can damn it. I'm going to help you. I'm going to make it simple. Everybody pay attention. When you're dealing with anybody, male, female, I don't care. Don't be rude. Keep your hands to yourself. And it sounds like something you learned in 2nd grade. Okay. And you're 19 years old and you just finished high school in Topeka, Kansas, and you don't know when you're being rude or not. If somebody tells you you're being rude, say, I'm sorry, and walk away. Don't argue, because you probably don't know any better. That's the first piece. The second piece is there's 400 of you, 40 women, 10% of the crew, because that's all we had berthing for. I can't have a female petty officer sitting on a scope at 2 o'clock in the morning in the Persian Gulf, staring at that scope, waiting for somebody to shoot at me, and have her worried about what you're doing over here, or what you just said to her, or whether or not you're the chief petty officer that's trying to coerce or flirting with her.
Right.
I can't have that. I can't have it.
She's trying to do her job.
And here's the other thing, ladies. I mentioned 2 sisters, no brothers, 2 daughters, no sons. You're all here. You're warriors. There's no bench. You're here for a purpose. You're here to help me fight this ship. So you're not a victim. If somebody tries to victimize you, you have an obligation to bring that to me immediately. And I will deal with it. And picture really dark eyebrows. I will deal with this with a swift ferocity that you have come to expect that I would deal with an Iranian gunboat. I will deal with it swiftly. And you are not immune if you're part of a problem. Never had a problem. Never had a problem.
Because you communicated.
I communicated very clearly. And as I tell them, how many guys have commanded a ship at sea? Oh, just me. How many guys have commanded a ship at sea in the Persian Gulf? Oh, just me. How many guys have conducted combat operations in the Persian Gulf in the last 5 years? Oh, just me. Who do you want, crew, with their eye on the horizon? Yeah. Who do you want to be on the bridge to make sure that who understands the situational awareness, understand the rhythm of the Persian Gulf? If you make me leave the bridge and put on my dress uniform and go to the starboard helo hangar and read you your rights under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, it will be ugly.
But so now let's go back to something we talked about just now on the podcast, on your show.
Yeah.
You said you do not believe in coercive leadership. This is not coercive. This is actually laying out, if you do X, Y will happen.
Yes.
It is not, if you don't do X, it's because I said so, and then you will have hell to pay.
Correct.
And when did you identify that in your leadership journey? I know you said early on with your dad and being around military.
I saw when I first took command of USS Wert in the early 90s. And I saw it before that too. And I felt prey to this as well. Sometimes it's easier to use the Uniform Code of Military Justice to solve difficult leadership problems. And I evolved in command of Wert that said, Chief, I'm not going to let you use me to solve an internal management issue. Right. Okay. So when I walk on board Way City, I said, my job, tools, time, training. So I would walk around. I did a lot of walking around. I'd see some chief berating some seaman. I would walk up. I go, oh, Chief, I would look very, very concerned. Chief, you seem very distraught. Are you okay? Well, it seemed, blah, 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 blah. I said, what's going on? He said, well, this seaman, blah, 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 blah. Oh, did they do it on purpose? Did they purposely do something you did not tell them to do? Are they doing it wrong on purpose? And the answer is almost always not. And so I would say, oh, then either they didn't get sufficient instruction. You didn't give them the tools to do the job.
Right.
And so we have a leadership failure here, of course, but it's not his. Seaman Gamache, scurry away. Chief and I have to take a walk. It didn't take very long at all before that sort of yelling and screaming that's traditional. You hear that. That's what sailors do. No, that's what you do because you've lacked the skill set or the patience, which we've talked about, the patience to adequately explain the purpose of the mission, or the paint locker is not functioning properly, or he didn't have the tools available because the guy's not down in a forward bosun locker issuing the tools. This is a failure at your level, Chief.
Right. The buck stops with you.
That's right.
This is your team. And if it doesn't go according to plan, it's not X, Y, and Z's fault. It's your fault.
Yeah.
It's your mission.
Yep, exactly right.
And I think that when we look at that example in particular, and then we talk about the lawyer and this idea, or the teachers and the principal, and this idea of just because you're a great teacher does not necessarily make you a great principal. Does it also feel like for some of those commanders, for some of those petty officers, it was, well, I am in a leadership role, so I have to act with gusto. I have to enforce coercive leadership because that is what historically.
That's the model they grew up with.
This is the model.
That was the model. That's correct. Yeah. And I decided not to do that. And of course, at this point, I'm 20 years in the Navy, and I went to military school, and my language was not suitable for office work. So I decided to quit, dropping the F-bomb. I said, I'm not going to do that. Difficult, but it became around me was this no F-bomb zone, because I said, we are professionals, behave professionally. We can do this without having to resort to that sort of abusive language, which creates another environment, which is not necessarily a place where young sailors can express their
want. Because we also use the NFL example. Once upon a time, it would be, well, get with the program, or this isn't the place for you, as opposed to, well, maybe
or the coach choking out the player on the sidelines. That has happened not so long ago.
Yes, exactly. Or we gave the example, and so let's say it again, the example of once upon a time in college athletics. Coaches could say, if you don't do what I need you to do, I'm going to pull your scholarship.
That's right.
And especially for those student athletes coming from lesser socioeconomic status, where college was their way out, not just for them, but for
college sports was their way out.
Yes.
College was
the academic part was additional.
That's a lesser included offense.
They're really athletes. They're not student athletes, but I digress. But point being, they would say, okay, coach, I will give into your coercive leadership because I cannot lose this scholarship. I cannot be pulled off the team because this is how I'm going to feed my family. This is how I'm going to get and so that's where I think, to an extent, I don't think it's just athletics. I don't think it's just exclusive to athletics. I think it's in the military fields. It's on ships. It's in workplaces. This is the way we've always done it. So you have to either get with the program, or this is not the place for you, as opposed to maybe the place that you are currently existing in is less productive than what it could be.
Well, and again, using the coaching model and kind of mirroring the military, you also see some where the prize athlete now is not held to the same standard.
Yes.
And so that destroys the fabric of the entire organization. And you see the coach, bailing out some kid who got picked up shoplifting or whatever they've done, and then that guy not having any repercussions. Okay.
Yeah.
That destroys the fabric of the organization. So, for example, I might grab one of my ensigns and chew him like a rag doll. Well, everybody sees that. They say, well, that could be me next. Right. Okay, they're not going to be open with me. They're not going to be
the ensigns don't get a pass.
Correct.
No one gets a pass.
Everybody's held to the same standard. Absolutely. And again, more often than not, what I try to do with my sailors and my officers is that the guy's not making it. Is he doing it on purpose? And the answer to that is no. You have to redouble your efforts. Now, I was lucky because Way City had been a research and development ship for 5 years. The very best and the brightest that were at the Bureau of Personnel, who had to go back to sea because that's their career route, they were really, really good. And they sent themselves to Way City and Vicksburg because they didn't deploy. This was sweet duty. So I had more master chiefs and senior chiefs on that ship than I had chief petty officers on my frigate. So I had this depth of leadership. Now I had to tweak them because they all come with different leadership models. Many of them, this traditional 1950s Navy, that is, hurry up and wait.
Right.
And so getting all those guys on board and focus allowed me to just step all the way back and just watch the magic. And like I said, Master Chief Rylan Remy came to me in 2006 and said, I want to work for you for the rest of my life. And he's now been with me. We started the company in July of 2006. Yeah. We're about to celebrate our 20th year.
I love it.
And I got two Master Chiefs and Senior Chief who run my company. And they do what they do because they understand what we're doing. They understand that they will benefit from the outcome because I share the wealth, I share the benefit. And
there's nothing to hide.
Yeah. The other part about what we're doing in the company is I tell people that what we do, Orion Solutions LLC,
defense contractor.
We're specific to the Department of the Navy. We take old sailors, we put them on the podium in a Navy schoolhouse where they teach young sailors how to use their weapon systems and sensors so that those kids can grow up to be old sailors. We help those kids learn to fight their ships. And right now, in the last 3 or 4 years in particular, between the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean and the Persian Gulf, these guys are getting shot at almost every day. And so far, the kids we've trained have done me proud.
And but that's you. That is why you love being a part of our mentoring program. That's why you love teaching at UNF, because you want to give back in the same way that your company is giving back to that next generation of naval officers. I know our time is short, but I do want to circle back just briefly, because it is a line that working in sports media has been said to me more than once. Work smarter, not harder.
Well, that's a failure in leadership. That's a failure in leadership. You solve the problem. That's basically what I'm saying. Yes. I can't solve this for you. You have to solve it, and I have no. And
also, we don't care about the quality of the solution. Just find a solution.
Find a solution. And oh, by the way, I've now passed it off to you. So if you fail, not on me. So again, we talked about tiger teams versus dragon
which
teams.
I love that. Yes.
But working, do more with less. No, that you failed. You have not provided me the tools, the time, and the training to do my job. That's the 3 T's. That's it. That's it as a leader. And so if and I told my guys, if I get overtasked by my boss, my job is to tell him that no, we can't do it. If we've been running too hard and I'm now sleep deprived where it's dangerous. Perfect example, 9/11. We were underway off the coast, and we were doing a final evaluation program problem. It's a war game basically, with inspectors on board and instructors on board, and it's a prerequisite to going out to do the next level of training with the battle group. And we should have done it several months earlier, but our schedule didn't permit it. So we're doing it the morning we're getting underway to go do the next. 9/11 happens. I get a call. Rylan Remy comes to me and says, "Captain, you need to come here." So I called the head inspector, the head assessor, and I said, "Here's the deal. Word of this is going to get around the crew pretty quickly. When that happens, these guys that are doing something very dangerous now will be distracted and someone will get hurt. So you tell me when I've got a C-. When you tell me when we've reached a level where it's passing, and then we're going to stop and you need to get off my ship, because I am not going to go through this kabuki dance for higher authority where I now have real world considerations that might impact the safety and security of my sailors."
Right. And the productivity.
Absolutely.
Because now you're not even going to get accomplished what you want to accomplish.
That's right.
Because you're compromised. But it takes leadership to say, no, we are not going to achieve the end result.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to adapt, and that's okay.
Yep.
That's how we get to the ultimate solution.
I don't need an A. Just I didn't need an A to get through college either. C students are running the world, by the way.
Hey, listen, UNF students are going to be watching this, so for what it's worth. But I can talk to you all day, Captain Rick.
Okay. Yeah, thank you
I'm
so
getting
much.
the high sign from Brandon over there. We appreciate the studios for hosting us and appreciate you having me on your show. Appreciate you joining the UNF Leadership Podcast.
A lot of fun. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the UNF Leadership Podcast. For more episodes like this, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube and podcast channels. This has been a presentation of the Taylor Leadership Institute at the University of North Florida. Swoop!